And once you get in those professional organizations, join any committees possible. Again, I know numerous people in the field that ended up getting a position because they were on a committee with somebody at another school and they said, hey, we're going to have a job open in 2 months. You should apply. And they've already built those relationships before the interviews started. Networking takes effort. It cannot be a passive experience. So steps to a job search. There are steps to a job search. It is not something that just happens. Number one, you must prepare. Before you apply, you must prepare. And we're going to talk about how over the next couple slides. Then the application process. And then you've made it through to the interview stage. And then finally, we'll wrap up with how to accept an offer and wrap up where your previous institution is. First thing, what is my digital footprint? Every single person on this call should Google themselves the second you get out of this conference today. Why? Because 50% of employers admit to Googling job candidates and the other 50% lie about it. Somebody on every staff is going to Google your name, your school, anything on your resume they can connect to you. Secondly, take my friend Vince Vaughn's advice for social media. Lock it up. Your accounts should be private. How many sessions do we give student athletes about go make sure there's not a tweet you made when you were 13 that's going to come back and publicly embarrass you? It's the same for us. If you made a political statement on social media within the last 10 years, I don't care where you fall on the spectrum, you should have that be a private social media account. Protect yourself. Don't let something you said when you were 15 cut you from a job you want when you're 24. LinkedIn, I wanted to talk about specifically, but because it is the professional social media. What do we want to convey on LinkedIn? Professionalism. This starts with your headshot. It should be a professional looking headshot. If you don't have one, have someone take one of you up against a wall with a clean background where you look like a professional. It should not be you at a wedding just because you like the photo. Definitely shouldn't be the guy in the photo holding a couple of adult beverages. Professionalism is one of the keys to our field. Secondly, LinkedIn, and we're going to talk a lot about getting valuable connection information and research in the job interview. How valuable is LinkedIn connection? Well, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Why do I say that? Well, I'll use 2 people on my staff as an example. One of our staff members accepts every single LinkedIn connection he gets, whether he knows the individual or not. So whether that relationship that he has a connection with someone you know can help you or not, maybe, maybe not. We've got another staff member. She only accepts LinkedIn connections from people she actually knows in the field. So if she has a connection, it's someone she has met before, and that connection is extremely valuable for you. So LinkedIn, you can use it, but again, take those connections with a grain of salt. Types of jobs you need to look for. You've got some decisions to make as you're in your job search. First, I'm going to talk about location. Where are you willing to go live? If you are from South Florida, are you willing to move to Montana for a job? This is something you must decide, and you need to decide that before you start applying for jobs. Do you want to work at a Power 5 institution or a mid-major school? Both have pluses and minuses. Mid-major institution, you're going to get your hands on a lot more things, get to wear a lot of different hats, maybe get to work with a higher profile sport quicker in your career, but you're probably going to make a little less money starting out. So where do you want to work? Understand the institutions you're looking at. So what role do you actually want? We've got people on this Zoom who want to be advisors, some who want to be learning specialists, some who want to work in student athlete development. Well, what do you want to do? And understand, at some institutions, those are hybrid roles. Especially at a smaller institution with a staff of 2 or 3, you are all things to all people. Understand what you want to do and what your skill set is the best fit for when you're looking for jobs. And then finally, upward mobility. Again, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be long-term? How will this job help you get there? Where to look? Everybody has looked on NACTA and NCA, I promise. Every one of you has already applied for jobs on those platforms. However, I want you to understand, not every institution uses those to advertise jobs. Why? Because it's very expensive for the institution. It's about $500 to place an ad. Some schools don't want to use their budget item on that. So where do you look for other jobs? Higher ed jobs, Indeed, the Higher Education Consortium. These all pull jobs off of campus HR websites. And I underline campus HR websites because if you have a school that is your dream school and you are actively looking for a job, you should be checking their website at least every 2 weeks to see if they have a job posted. Because even if it goes on Indeed, you may not catch it and you've missed your opportunity. I always like to share highered360.com with everyone. It's a shortcut. The screenshot is from there. It shows every university in the state of Texas and a direct link to their HR websites. So it can save you time trying to find where the jobs are. Use the resources that are out there. Mock interviews. You should prepare for an interview. You should never wing it. Before you apply for the first job, you should be doing mock interviews. This is too important to try to wing it and, fake your way through it and hope you can say something correctly. Ask for help. Ask your supervisor. Ask your director. I'm sure the full-time staff at your institution is willing to give you a mock interview to help prepare you. Video yourself. As cringeworthy as it is to watch yourself on video, you need to see your body language, how you sound, how you respond to questions, so you can get better. It's self-scouting. As coaches say, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. Film's going to tell you how you're actually coming across to other people, whether you want to admit it or not. Take constructive criticism. When your boss says, hey, you need to work on this for interviews, work on it, use it. And then again, use your campus resources. Every campus career center has resources you can use there. Here at Florida State, we have the big interview platform online that is an AI program that will work with anyone. You don't have to involve a second person to help you get better at interviews. Every campus has this for their grad students. Use what is where you are. It's free. Research before interviews. As one of my current interns commented a couple weeks ago, most departmental websites are horrible. You can't find the information you need. It's not in a good place. It's never updated because, newsflash, student athlete, academics, student athlete development, we're not at the top of sports information's priority list as far as keeping websites updated. So they're not always the best. Some are amazing. LSU's site, which is why I use them, is one of the best in the country. They do a tremendous job keeping it updated and up to speed. So what are you looking for on these websites? Staff directories where everybody starts, but what else can I find there that can help me prepare before an interview? I call them hidden resources. Sometimes a frustration is, well, it doesn't list who's working with what sports, so I don't have a clue what job this possibly is. Well, where can you find that information if it's not listed under academics? Oftentimes, a media guide will list all the staff that works with a sport, and you can see who the advisor is with each sports. Student athlete handbook is also another gold mine of information you can find about the department, and especially as we talk about, right questions you're going to ask in an interview, ways you can find different pieces of information to show that you did your research. Also, they're using Google and LinkedIn for you. Use it for them. You should have a background of every staff member, a short 2-sentence thing so you know where they're from, what is their background, how long have they been there, all the information you can possibly use. And yes, before any interview, it is very appropriate to ask who was on the hiring committee. So that way you know who you're going to be talking to and you can do your prep work on them just like they're doing their prep work on you. So what's in a title? This is another confusing part of our field, is reading that staff directory and trying to figure out, who is actually who. Who is the decision maker? Who's the person on the committee that's there to give a voice, but they don't have the final say. Who do I need to worry about? General rule in athletics, director's 1. Anytime you see deputy director, that's a number 2. Senior will trump anything behind it in the title. Senior associate director is higher in rank than associate. Assistant director, advisor, coordinator, specialist, these are your entry-level jobs. Now, athletic department versus departmental titles. Assistant athletic director trumps deputy director in a department. Understand the differences. My boss is a great example here at Florida State. She has 3 titles. She's the director of our department. She's an associate athletic director, and she is also an assistant dean, since we report to the campus side of the house as well. Understand how titles fall. And I love the meme from The Incredibles. If everyone is special, then no one is. If you look at a staff directory and they have 7 assistant directors and they don't have anybody as an advisor, coordinator, learning specialist, that is their entry-level position. So as I mentioned, you should be doing extensive research before an interview. Part of our internship program here at Florida State, we do a lot of public speaking and a lot of presentations. Our interns are given a job ad and have to give me a 20-minute presentation based off the research they did off that ad. That is the amount of research you should do before each interview. You should be able to get up and talk about the city, the school, their staff, everything they possibly do for 15 to 20 minutes before you interview with them. Cover letters. Cover letters should be a fresh creation every time. You should not use the same cover letter for every job and change the school's name. Because what happens, and we get them every year, I would love to work at Florida State University, and then 3 paragraphs down, it talks about what a great fit they would be at SMU. You're done there. You're not getting an interview. Sorry, it's over. You wasted your time. Your cover letter should also not be a straight rehash of your resume. It should point to your resume. The committee should read your cover letter and immediately go to your resume to take a closer look. It should highlight skills that are a fit for this particular job. And as I underline, no grammatical mistakes. Majority of you have graduate degrees. You have had to write at some point to get through college. You should not have grammatical mistakes. And there's also another mistake here, is not having somebody read over your cover letter before you send it. You should also be keeping your references involved during your job search. So one of our interns came up with this template about 5 years ago, and we've used it every year since. It keeps you organized. You don't have to text your reference every time you apply for a job, but every 10 days or so, if you're applying for new jobs, send them an email and say, hey, here's where I'm actively looking. Why? Because think back about how small this field is. You may not know that someone they used to work with 3 jobs ago is now on staff at Iowa State. They do, and it gives them the opportunity to reach out on your behalf. Helps you stay organized, helps you track jobs. A lot of terminology on job ads that I want to make sure you understand. Closing date. This is the last date the job is open for applications. You should not apply on the last date it is open for applications. Why? The exact same reason we tell our student athletes, when it's due at 11:59 p.m., don't try to submit it at 11:57, even though they all do it. Because if you have a technology issue and you don't get the application in, you just lost your chance at that job. Don't wait till the last second. Date of first review. This is the first time the committee will look at applications. They will not look before then. A lot of times they're not able to look before then, depending on which system they applied for. but that is the first date they will look at the applications. And again, open until filled. That means a lot of times it is a rolling application process. They may start interviewing immediately if they have a resume they love, and it may be filled. So if you postpone and procrastinate and say, well, I'll apply in a week, it may not be there. Required qualifications, those are minimums. If you don't meet those, you cannot be hired for the job. HR will not let them. I can use my past experience early in my career as a great example of this. There was a job that was written that said an applicant must have 4 years of full-time experience. HR there said that was 48 months. I had 46 months full-time experience and they would not let the director hire me. So that is a baseline. Desired qualifications. This is what they want in a candidate. So if it desires a doctorate, most likely they're looking for somebody with a doctorate. They may not get all their desired qualifications, but that is what the hiring manager is going into the process looking for. Understand the difference in applying directly to email. Someone will look at your resume and cover letter immediately. If you apply to an HR system, it must be routed to the department first before they can do anything. Sometimes routing takes some time. So just because a job closes on a Friday, it may not get routed to the department because someone in HR actually has to push a button until Wednesday or Thursday of the next week. And we'll talk about more about timelines later. But understand, sometimes that is out of the hiring department's hands. Final, the HR system applications, the questions they have you fill out, the additional questions, these filter resumes. If you do not answer these correctly, it never gets to the hiring department. But at the same time, do not lie. If you get through and you get offered a job and the background check comes back and you lied on this, you're done. They fire you immediately. You can't recover. One last piece as we get ready to talk about resumes next is understanding how to find what the salary is for a position. And I hate to tell you, you're not going to get rich in this field. This is not the place to do that. This is not the athletics where we make millions of dollars. So this is a great example. This is a job ad that was up a couple weeks ago for a position open across the country. And it says pay grade 29E. Well, how do I know what that means? If a pay grade is listed, you can go to their HR website for the university and find the matrix, the pay matrix and pay scale. It's going to have quartiles, and understand entry-level jobs, you're going to be in that bottom 20th percentile. It may not be the minimum number on there, but it's the number they're going to pay. So just because it says the salary range is up to $80,000, that's not real. Your resume. There is a school of thought that no resume should be longer than a page. I've got a staff member here who gets aggravated any resume that is longer than a page, we get an application. I won't say a page is the maximum, but if you go over 2 pages, nobody's reading it. You're wasting time. You have information on there that doesn't help you. So what are valuable skills? What are we looking for? What is your resume trying to show? Communication skills, attention to detail. What are not valuable skills? The fact that you can use Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel are expectations. They shouldn't be on your resume at this point in 2021. Formatting, don't get too fancy. Think about who you're applying to. We're in higher education. A lot of times a dean is looking at your resume. That fancy format that you think looks awesome, that a marketing firm may like, that doesn't help you in higher ed. Stay conservative with your formatting. The information is more important. Also, don't put your picture on your resume. That's a big no-no. And I underlined it. Job duties accuracy is paramount. Sit down with your supervisor and say, is everything on my resume a good synopsis of what I do here? I know it's a temptation. We see it every year of young professionals overstating what they did in the GA or internship. And then you call the reference and they say, well, I mean, he was in the room when the advisor did some of that, but if you didn't actually do it, don't list it. Have somebody check it over. It protects you. Just a nugget here, file names matter. If you upload it in a system or email it to someone, they can see the file names you use. So John's best resume number 37 or Emily's greatest cover letter ever, not a great reflection of your professionalism. And then finally, everything should be a PDF. It's 2021. Don't trust Word to not change the formatting when you upload your resume into a system. PDF everything, you know the formatting is locked in to be exactly what you want it to be. Zoom, this is the new reality. And what were previous, the phone round of interviews has now gone to Zoom because everybody is comfortable with Zoom across the country. So what do you need to do to get ready for a Zoom interview, a first round interview? Professional dress, dress like you're going to be there in person. Assume the technology is going to fail. You should not be on Wi-Fi. Be somewhere you can plug into an internet hardwired, because we all know Wi-Fi goes out in every meeting with somebody we're on. Don't let it be yours. Call someone on your Zoom before the meeting so they can make sure everything looks good. They can hear you, see you clearly. Check your microphone. If you're going to use a headset, make sure it works. Check the lighting, check your background. It should be a clean background behind you, or at the very least, not distracting. Make sure the camera is actually focused on you. It shouldn't be your forehead is the entire interview. It shouldn't be pointed up at the ceiling fan behind you. Make sure the camera is framed with you in it properly. Again, have somebody help you. Don't be a lone ranger here. And remove distractions. We all saw the clip from BBC when my poor man had his kid run in live on international television last spring. Lock doors, put up signs. We know it's probably not going to be a kid. It may be your dog, but if you're at the office, it's probably a student athlete who's going to try to walk in. Lock the door, make sure there is signage so no one disturbs you in your interview. You've got enough to deal with concentration-wise. You don't need anything else. In the interview, common interview questions, and you're going to get a version of these in any interview you have. Tell me about yourself. This, if you took a public speaking class, is your elevator speech. This should be the easiest thing you do. Plan it out. Don't memorize it, because if you memorize it, you get off place, you're going to lose yourself and start blah, 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 blah. Plan it out. What areas do I want to hit? What do I want to talk about? What things, they're holding your resume. What things do I want to mention for them to look at my resume as I'm giving this piece? And again, it's an introductory speech, 2 to 3 minutes max. If you're still talking at 7, 8 minutes, you've lost the committee. They're already annoyed at you. Don't do that. Why this institution? You should have a reason for this particular institution. Why do you want to go work at Ole Miss? Why the University of Arkansas? It shouldn't just be because I want a job. You should have a connection and a reason you want to work there. It could be simple. It could be you're extremely active in N4A and I feel like I could grow as a young professional with your staff. And, you know, I visited Fayetteville and I love the mountains and it's beautiful up here. Have a reason you want to work there. Strengths and weaknesses. Your reference is going to get asked these questions. Why don't you go to them and say, what are my strengths? When somebody calls and asks, what are you going to tell them are my strengths? And the same thing for weaknesses. But here's one thing do not do. Do not Google what is an okay weakness to say in an interview. Because if you tell the committee, I try too hard, I take on too much responsibility, I need to learn how to delegate, they're going to know you Googled it and you're BSing them. And then finally, an advising educational philosophy. This is also for my student athlete development friends. You should have a philosophy of why you want to work in this field and should be able to articulate it. That's something you should be prepared to talk about in every single interview. Themes you need to convey. Now, these are themes. You should not have to use these words, but every one of these should come through in every interview you do. Number one, ethics. Why? Because if a director is hiring you as a learning specialist, they're assuming you have the ethical background that you're not going to cross a line to have a major violation, because then you get fired and they get fired. Oftentimes, this is a scenario question, and the prompt is just for you to use ethical behavior. Ethics. Professionalism. Again, you should never use the word professionalism, but all of your answers, everything how you prepared, how you got rid, everything should lead professionalism. This is someone we want to have on our staff as a professional that we are willing to put out in front to represent our university with the public. Passion for the field. And why do I say passion for the field? Because simply, there are a whole lot of different ways you can work as an academic advisor, as a person working with learning disability students, as a person with student affairs in higher ed. 50,000 of those jobs every year. Why do you want to work with student athletes? Why this specific population? What has brought you to this point? Why do you care about student athletes? There's a lot of helping professions out there. Why do you want to do this specific community? Attention to detail. Again, attention to detail. And then your communication skills, that should come across in your package. How are you answering interview questions? A lot of what we do is public speaking. A lot of it is to small groups, recruiting visits, team meetings. It's rare we're speaking to 100, 200 people. It happens, but it's not but a couple times a year. How are you communicating? Are they going to be comfortable with you representing the office? Your questions for the committee, they should be specific. There is nothing worse than sitting on a committee and getting a vague question. Do not ask how the staff atmosphere or environment is, because even if it is the most toxic place in the world to work, the directors on the call, they're going to lie to you. That's a wasted, vague question. Do your research. This is why you've done your homework on the committee. Jim, you've been at this institution for 20 years. Why are you still there? You've had opportunities. You're nationally renowned across the industry. Why have you stayed? What is it about this place that's special? Ask those questions, and also don't ask everyone on the call to answer the question. If there's 6 people on the call, don't go around the room and ask that question. Show your research. Again, limited. 3 to 5 questions is the max, and I lean toward the 3. Whether you ask 3 or 4 questions is not going to be the difference whether you get to the next round. Plus, save something for the on-campus interview. Prepare more questions than you're planning to ask, because hopefully they'll have answered a couple in the interview for you, but have some ready to go for the next round as well. And it is always appropriate to ask next steps or timeline at the end, because if you don't, that's the first thing they're going to say before they wrap up the call. That can always be your last question. Finalist interviews. This is our own campus interview. This spring, it's going to be a lot of Zoom, but moving forward in the future, it'll go back to our own campus format. You're going to repeat yourself a lot in an on-campus interview. Most of them are a day-long interview. Why? Because you're going to give your tell me about yourself speech 7 times to every different group. So you need to plan. And again, you can ask and get the itinerary and know who's going to be on the meeting. But think about each group as an individual group and what their point of view is, because that's how they're interviewing. The full academic staff, they want a teammate. They want to see if you're a fit. Somebody who's going to come in and be competent enough. I'm not going to get extra workload because you can't handle it. But someone who's pleasant, I want to be around. Someone around the office I wouldn't mind talking to. Coaching staff, they want to see if you can connect with student athletes. They want to see if you're someone they can put in front of mom and dad on that recruiting visit. Because is mom going to come out of your office on the recruiting visit and go, she's going to take care of my baby? Can you be that person? That's what the coaching staff wants to see. Compliance, they're looking for that ethical behavior. Registrar, attention to detail, certification. Can you handle the paperwork side of the job? FAR and senior administration, that's the 50,000, 100,000 foot view. Again, is this someone we would feel comfortable representing our athletic department out in the world? Timelines. And I underestimated how many searches move slow. Every director on this call is nodding to this slide. Human resources is horrible everywhere. While we have priorities and we want to get people in as fast as possible with our jobs, they don't think you take precedence over any other department on campus. Background checks take time. Depending on how your system is set up, it takes time to put together an offer for a candidate. No process has ever moved faster than a search committee wanted it to. So that begs the question, why haven't they called me? I interviewed 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything. I was a finalist, but it's been 10 days and they said they hoped to be in touch last week and they haven't. Should I call them? Should I email? What should I do? Be patient. Most of the time, if they haven't reached out, it's because they legally can't. Here at Florida State, we can't put an offer out until the background check has gone through. We can't even use the word offer in a conversation with the candidate until then. It is usually out of their hands. As much as it drives you crazy and you really want to reach out, I don't care what the internet says on the private sector about reaching out and it makes them see you want the job. They know. They know you want the job. They know you're very interested. They want to wrap the search up more than you want to, I promise. Emailing them, calling them is just going to make you have an awkward conversation where they can't tell you anything. So it sucks, but it is what it is. Finally, we get an offer. We have made it to the end. We have done what we needed to, and they have offered us. Typical process is they're going to call you and verbally offer you over the phone. How to respond. I tell my interns always say thank you. Do not accept because you need time to process. Ask if you can take 24, 48 hours. Sometimes they'll tell you that they need your response in a certain time because they're trying to move the process of HR along as fast as they can. Or a great example I had with one of my interns this year is they couldn't start the background check until they got a verbal acceptance. So he had to go ahead and tell them whether he was going to take the job or not. Even then, he took a day to think about it, talk it over with mom and dad. This is a big deal, especially if you're moving across the country. Never take a job you cannot see yourself in for 3 to 5 years minimum. Minimum. Take your time. When you accept it, always ask for a formal written offer because you want to make sure that salary number is the number they said. They can provide that to you 98% of the time before you accept, but always ask for a formal written offer. And then congratulations, we got the job. Now we got to decide what to do, how to move. You need to finish well at your current institution. I know mentally you're already checked out. I'm moving to Austin, Texas in 3 weeks. I got to find an apartment. I got to decide if I'm going to break up with my girlfriend who's here because she ain't coming with me. I've got a lot of things on my mind. That's all personal time stuff. When you're at work, you should be locked in even more. People remember their last impression of you. Finish tasks. Those of you who are helping and advising right now across the country, write a ton of notes for whoever's going to have that advising student next year. That little comment they make to you that they've never made to anybody else, don't let it leave with you because you're not going to remember it in 6 months. And whoever is in your seat is going to need to have that information. Always leave it in a better space than you got it. Thank y'all for taking the time to listen to me. I hope you picked up a couple nuggets, and we absolutely will take some questions.
Thank you so much, Charlie. For our people who came in kind of late, could you just go over and give a little bio background about what you do and how did you get to your position where you are now?
Okay. So my name is Charlie Hogan. I'm a senior associate director here at Florida State. I was asked to give this presentation because I run our postmaster's internship program. We were lucky enough to win the N4A model practice last year. And in this role, in the past 8 years, I have assisted about 40 different interns getting their first full-time job. So that's my background. That's why I was asked to give this presentation. And as I mentioned, I hope there's a nugget or two you can take back to your job searches.
Wonderful. I saw a hand somewhere. Y'all can feel free to use in the reactions. You should be able to wave or you can type out your questions in the waiting room as well, or in the chat. All right, Charlie, we have a question. What advice do you have about asking for feedback when you don't get an interview for a role or offered a position that you interviewed for?
You can always ask for feedback. Now, whether you get a response or not is based on time. I know in the past, I will respond if I can, but there have been some who have asked for feedback that gets lost in the shuffle of advising week to week after. So you can always ask for feedback. You may not love their answer, but sometimes the answer is just going to simply be the other candidate was just a little better fit for what we were looking for.
Okay, we have James who raised his hand. Go ahead, James, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yep. Hello, Mr. Hogan. Thank you for putting this on. Jessica as well for hosting. So I'm moving from recreation into like academic advising for student athletes. What is the best advice would you say for someone who does not have that experience to, apply to a full-time job, but also get their foot in the door?
You need to find a internship or a GA. Postmasters internships are becoming almost mandatory across the country. The last N4A survey they did, I think it was up to 20% of the membership has had them. They've really taken off in the last 10 years. I'm sure if you've watched the N4A listserv, there's been 8, 10 different universities that posted their internship, and that's really the best way in the door to get to that full-time position.
Awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have a couple other questions. What is your advice for reaching out ahead of applying or shortly after you applied?
Well, once you've applied, that's going to be more, you're going to want your connections to reach out behind the scenes. You reaching out ahead of time doesn't really do anything for you. Again, you don't want to run the risk of aggravating the person that you're reaching out to. They're getting a lot of communication. So let's say you're at LSU. It's going to mean a whole lot more to me if the advisor you work with calls me and says, "Hey, let me tell you about this GA we have and this intern. They're amazing," and rattles off all the positives for you. That really helps. And in fact, if you have a connection on your staff that works with a staff you're applying for, sometimes it's a red flag if they don't reach out. I know we've had conversations of, "Oh, so-and-so is on staff, is a GA at Michigan State's applying," but we haven't heard anything from Jim about them. That's not good. He's usually pretty good about letting us know if somebody quality is applying. So sometimes it's a red flag if people who have connections to the staff you're applying for don't reach out. This is a small world. Use your people resources.
Awesome. Thank you. We have another question. Is it okay to negotiate pay after being offered? And if so, how is the best way?
No, going in, it depends on the institution if there's much flexibility. For us at Florida State, the way our stuff works in the state of Florida, zero negotiating ability. Our offer is our offer. We can't budge. Other places, sometimes you can negotiate up a little. Sometimes it may be, not salary you can negotiate, but other pieces. I know I had a colleague who came on staff here and negotiated that she joined the staff in May. Well, Florida State paid for her to go to N4A that June as part of her acceptance package. So there are other things you can negotiate. You're not going to get a ton more money, especially entry level with negotiating, but understand you can ask, but sometimes the answer is going to be, we have no wiggle room, and it's because of HR policies.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you everyone, by the way, for the questions coming in. Keep them coming. I have another one. When it comes to thank you notes and letters or emails, what is the best way to go? And what is the recommended timeline?
I would say emails, thank you notes, again, because this happens all the time because of the mail system. They'll usually arrive after decisions have been made. Thank you emails, absolutely. You should reach out to every member of the committee, and kind of like your cover letter, don't copy paste the exact same message, but you should communicate. I would generally say within 24 hours, whenever your interview was, just a simple thank you for meeting with me, thank you, and you share some nugget you got from them to show you to pay attention to what they said in the interview process. But yes, it should be part of your application.
Wonderful. We have another question. What is something that you wish you had known early in your career? And from the same person, thank you so much for leading the way. It has been beneficial and informative.
Something I wish I'd have known early in my career, a billion things. That is really what I designed our internship program to do, was understand all the things that our staff wishes we would have known coming in. And I think the attention to detail and just the difference the little things make. You know, not everybody is an extrovert. Not everybody loves the small talk. But that connection, eye contact, hey, how you doing? The smile, and again, I can't overemphasize what can I help you with when you don't work with that person, how far that can really give you a push you don't even know.
Great. We've got one more. And again, we have some time, about 10 more minutes of the presentation time if y'all want to keep asking questions. What is your advice for someone who has a lot of experience, but applying for an entry-level job because it is in the area and that they are interested in?
So that's a tough one. And this is a tough field to break into. So your full-time experience in something else and you want to get into this. Short term, try to make your skills transferable. Oftentimes, and this happens here, we'll have people come in who usually at the end of a GA somewhere else, and they're graduating, they say, you know what, I never thought about student athlete academic services. What can I do to get in the field? Try to find your skills that are transferable and be able to present that. If you've got time, so you're working at an institution and you're like, you know, this is something I want to do in the future, call the department there and ask, what can I do? Can I even volunteer? Can I mentor? Can I tutor? Can I do something to get some kind of applicable experience on my resume? And more important, that network connection to someone on your staff who is willing to speak for me in the field, because then they're willing to pick up that phone call and say, you know what? She doesn't have a ton of direct experience, but let me tell you about her is this, these things translate. We think she'd be an amazing learning specialist. Okay.
Great. We have a question. I'm currently at the Division II level, and much of the desired qualifications is experience at the Division I level. How can I still show myself as valuable having only experience at the D2 level?
You can definitely sell the D2 level. Y'all's academic requirements are actually a little more complicated than ours in some of the scenarios. So the skills are the same. And I would definitely argue there are D2 and even community college jobs that are better in our field than some of the low D1 jobs as far as quality of life and what you're working with. So keep applying. Again, skills translate. Think about the themes I talked about. you can present all of those, somebody will give you a chance.
Thank you. Looks like we've got one more, but again, we have a bit of time. So if you guys want to keep asking questions, feel free. What is the best advice for a professional that has experience in intercollegiate athletics and campus experience? And what is the best advice on how to leverage that to get back into intercollegiate athletics?
Okay, repeat the first part again.
What is the best advice for a professional that has experience in intercollegiate athletics and campus experience? And what is the best advice on how to leverage that? This is a question from Jacqueline. If you'd like to elaborate on that question.
Okay, well, I'll take it from there.
Okay.
And actually, Jacqueline, that is part of my story. Is I worked in this field and then got out for about 3 years and came back in. So I've been there. You can do it. It comes back to, again, building the connections, finding a way. If you don't have any connections from when you were in the field, it's finding a way to build connections to get back to the forefront. You've got the skills. If you've done this before, you should have somebody willing to assist you in that. And sometimes it may be, you got to move to one of those jobs that doesn't pay a lot. One of those low major, mid-major jobs to get back in the field, and then transfer back somewhere closer to home once you've got a little more experience, if that's what you want to do.
Perfect. We've got another question. What is the best post-interview question that you have been asked?
Ooh, the best post-interview question. You see, the ones you remember, the worst ones, like the ones the people who ask everybody in the call to answer a question, and it's just awkward and everybody's kind of hanging out. That's what you don't want. That's not leaving well of the interview. So best interview question. I can't come up with one specific question I think is the greatest. There have been some really good ones over the years, but it's something that shows attention to detail. You've researched our staff. You've told us why you want to work here. It's a very specific question that was not a surface level question. That's what I'm looking for. Show me you understand the process in the field enough that you can ask a question that I'm not going to get from other candidates.
I have a question. What question do you most frequently ask in an interview that gives you the biggest or the best idea of who the person you're interviewing is?
So this is just me personally. By the time the candidate is through their first 3 questions, I generally have an idea if they're moving on to the next round. And we always lead off with the tell me about yourself. And then we always come right behind it with a ask more in detail about your experience in the field. Because if you can't articulate those 2 questions and explain why your past experience would make you a good fit for our position, nothing you say the rest of the way is really going to sway us.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a couple more. Hello, I am an academic counselor intern for football at Kansas State on a 2-year contract. When would be an appropriate time to start looking for a full-time job before my contract ends?
So a few months before. HR timelines, generally if a job posts February 1st, that means they're interviewing in March, which means they want somebody April or May. So always back it up 2 or 3 months. Talk to your supervisor about it before you apply if you're on a contract. So with our interns, we tell them every year, because their contract's kind of the same way, it runs through May, February 1st, you can start applying for jobs. Now, we're a little more lenient than some places, and we recognize with that timeline, we're going to have 1 or 2 get jobs every year during March or April and leave us a little bit early. We're fine with that because it's put us past our advising time, which is our heaviest workload of the year. The vast majority of jobs in the field in the normal cycle, and I think we're going to go back to a normal cycle this spring, post in April, May, and June. So keep that in mind as you're panicking that you haven't seen anything you liked yet. They're coming, I promise. They always do.
Great. A couple more. Our department recently had a staff member take a position at another institution, which has allowed me to take on more responsibilities. At times, I have found it difficult to learn new tasks while working remotely. Do you have any advice for learning a new job while working remotely?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think we've all been challenged by the remote life. Whether it be, man, I need that file that's sitting on my desk at the office, or it is something new, new technology. Some of the positives coming out of this, and every one of y'all should be able to spin working remotely in COVID as a positive in your interviews. Every single one of you can talk about, communicating with student athletes and the intentional nature of what we have to do now. This should be a positive. Every one of you should also be talking about COVID in your interviews and how the challenge was there and how you met it. But as far as dealing with being remote, again, try to lean on your staff or a support system and ask others, even if you don't work with them responsibility directly, ask them, hey, how are you dealing with this? Or this is the challenge I'm seeing. Lean on each other. Our jobs are the hardest jobs in college athletics. Let's be honest. Nobody else has to deal with the student athletes the way we do. Use your network and your staff to help support you.
Thank you. We've got one more. If you remember the bad answers or questions that a candidate gives or asks, what is something that makes a candidate memorable in a positive way?
In a positive way, again, for me, and this is just me personally, again, it's a sense. Like, I know pretty quick, are they somebody who is at the level of what we want to hire? And it's coming across communication. Here's another thought. Every single one of them, you're going to get the ask me about yourself question. Always introduce yourself, because you don't have to think to say your name. And it gives you another 5 seconds to take that deep breath and get into what you want to get into. So take that note. Even if they've introduced you, say, again, my name is so-and-so. I'm currently a GA here. I was a student athlete previously at this institution, and then go into your tell me about yourself. Use the stuff you don't have to think to get started, because that'll calm the nerves and you'll get into it.
I have a question myself. For a graduate student just entering their position, what is the most important thing that they could do getting started in their career, working with their supervisors or working at the institution? What is the number one thing that you look for in a graduate assistant or a student intern that really makes them stand out to you in the long run?
So the thing we love when we get references on GAs, this is coming into our intern program and even the interns coming into our full-time positions, work ethic. Work ethic, when a reference starts with work ethic and maturity, that is the separators right there. Because there's nothing worse than someone who's going to be the first one out of the office. They're going to show up late every day. You're going to have to, as a supervisor, you're going to have to worry, are they actually getting everything done they're supposed to, especially coming out of this remote environment we've all been in. If a reference can say they handled everything we asked them to and went above and beyond while we've had to be remote in these challenges, we know that's a person we want on our staff.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? We have about 13 minutes until the next round of sessions start. So we do have a little bit of time. However, if there aren't, we'd like to thank you for showing up and for attending this session. And really hope you have a really good rest of the day. So any other questions, please let us know. We'll hang out for a little bit longer. but the next round of sessions will start at 11 o'clock. And you are very welcome, Stephanie. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, Charlie, we have another question. I am a graduate assistant in equipment with a football team. How can I take that experience and transfer it to an academic setting?
So one thing I'm going to advise you to do is, this is where I talked about trying to get some volunteer experience with academics. And we have this. This is very common at Florida State because we have one of the top sport management grad programs in the country. So we'll have people come in and do a year, and sometimes it's equipment, sometimes it's other fields they think they wanted to work in, and then after they do their internship for their master's program, they're like, no, that's not what I wanted to do. I actually like people. I want to go work in academics. So some of the skills that'll translate for what you're dealing with. I mean, attention to detail. There's a ton of it in the equipment world. Work ethic. I mean, you're in a nasty, hot, wet environment when all those uniforms are being cleaned. There's a lot you can sell there. It is taking what you've done and framing it toward this profession.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? Yep, we've got one more. Yep, there is time. I'm a tenured full professor, very interested in moving into this direction as the result of my work as a FAR on my campus. I'm still at a D3 school, so we do not have an academic services department at our institution. What advice would you give to help me break into the field?
Keep applying. There will be positions. So coming with that background, and especially I would say look at the lower Division I or mid-major institutions. A lot of times they're not looking for the experience we are at this level at the Power 5. So I mean, to work for us, to intern for us, you've got to have a GA in the field. So we're not going to hire a full-time staff member who doesn't have extensive experience, at least 3-4 years. And we will consider an intern a GA in that 3-4 years. But look at the lower level or look for jobs that are Olympic advising position jobs that are very clearly stated as that. That is the way you can break in the best.
Thank you, Charlie. We've got one more. I graduated with my master's in 2019. I have been actively applying for jobs and updating my resume. Any help with getting noticed in sports and college athletics? I have also used this time since gaining experience. So it looks like they're looking to get noticed in sports and collegiate athletics.
Again, keep applying, keep the faith, keep doing what you're doing. Maybe take your resume and frame it. So as I mentioned, I had some time outside of college athletics where I went and did some other things. So when you look at my resume, it is formatted into 2 different areas: direct experience, which is my working directly in student athlete academic services institutions I've been at. And then another page, which is other experience, which I've taken, and the skills from those jobs I highlight that translate back to this, but it's not listed chronologically. It's listed direct versus indirect, because when somebody sees my resume, I want them to look at the direct experience first before they go to the other stuff.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you, Charlie, very much. I definitely appreciated that. Very informative. Thank you for your time. I know everybody else probably does as well. Thank you to everyone who showed up today. We really hope you enjoy the rest of the day and the conference. I know LSU loves doing this every year, so it means a lot that we have you guys showing up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. If you think of another question later, show me your research skills. Go find my email on our website. Shoot me one.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. You have about 8 minutes until the next group of sessions start. So take a little break and we'll see you guys later.
Bye.